right, welcome everybody. Come on in. Talia is asking, why are you so cool, Pay? I assume that was for you because it couldn't have been for me. Pay is on mute. She's so cool that you can just assume that what she's so I can speak for Pay. Pay is so cool. I am so cool because I wear cool sweaters. I am possibly the most wise person in the Salesforce ecosystem. And
It's the owls.
it's the owls. Okay. Cool. I think we have satisfied Talia, and we will get kicked off with at least the beginning part of our sesh. If listen, I don't know. Should we come up with like a good first, like, what's a good break the ice question?
I don't know. What you have in your pocket?
Yeah. What do you
I,
have in your pocket right now? That's what Pay and I want to know. Um, you could say where you're from and all that stuff, but I guess people are going to be traveling for holidays. Maybe if you're from the U.S., if you're in the U.K., there's a holiday this week, so or wherever else you might be, because hopefully we are global. But please let us know what's in your pockets. We want to know. And it is 8:03, so we're doing the official intro. Okay. And hey, do you want to see about Matt? Okay, cool. Thank you. All right. But I've got 10, or at least 7 minutes of nonsense to chat about anyway. All right. So we'll do the official start now. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Salesforce Business Analyst Virtual Trailblazer Community, which is a mouthful. I did not pick out that acronym. I don't actually know what it spells. Hopefully, it's not something weird. Um, we have a great session today. We are going to be going through diagramming Salesforce solutions with Matthew Morris. And then we have our first author spotlight with our very own Pei Man Lim. And I'm going to apologize. I think I screwed up an email earlier this week, so sorry, Pei. But I think I got it all right, and I'm excited to talk about her new book, which launched last week. Cool. And of course, our logo courtesy of Shirtforce, Badass BA. Um,
Matt is here, by
Housekeeping.
the way.
Oh, Matt
Sorry,
is here.
but
Okay. Do you want to
yeah,
give him presenter?
I don't have the power.
Oh, well, you have your host. Oh, let me.
Uh,
All right, let's find Matt. All right. So our first agenda item is going to be to find our speaker and give him presenter mode. Okay, here he is. Welcome to Matt Morris. All right. So our housekeeping items before sweeping in our presenter into presenter mode is first, the meeting will be recorded, edited because Vanessa Grant, and posted on YouTube. Our YouTube channel is Badass SFBA. Badass BA was already taken. I don't know which badasses are on that YouTube channel, but it is not ours. Ours is Badass SFBA. The last session we did is already up there. We just haven't promoted it yet because busy. But this session will also be up there at some point. So please feel free to check out and subscribe, like and subscribe, as my 11-year-old would say. Also, our acceptance criteria for a successful meeting is right. You like that? Um, so chat, and we will do our best to keep up. While I'm chit chatting, I think Pay will keep an eye on the rest of y'all. And while Pay's speaking, I'll try and keep an eye on things. So we'll do our best. But it would help us, one, if you don't spam the chat, like, don't lean on your letter G and keep hitting enter, please. I would really appreciate that. Also, use the Q&A. If you have a question or something that you like very much need us to see, use either the Q&A or DM one of us is probably the best way to like ensure it gets in front of us. But Q&A if it's a question, DM if it's like, Vanessa, you have a huge like snot coming out of your nose, like, deal with this. Like, that one could be in DM, does not need to be in Q&A. And also keep an eye on pin posts. So for example, if Matt decides to share a really awesome link to his slide deck or his Pluralsight course or something like that, he might throw it in the chat and we might pin it up. So check if there's any useful pins at the top of the chat. You would think the arrow button would work, but it does not. Okay. So our agenda today is introductions. We will, or I, I'll introduce our folks for this particular session. Then we'll have diagramming Salesforce solutions with Matt Morris, which I have had the privilege of seeing virtually and also caught it at Dreamforce this past Dreamforce. Now, the contrast was a little off on my camera, but I swear there was amazing content in the background. There's me and Melinda catching Matt at Dreamforce. He's in the circle in the background. Then we have our author spotlight with Pay, and then approximately 30 minutes. We'll see how much time we have, and depending on how Q&A goes today, we usually do some kind of BA after dark chit chat where we turn off the recording and we gripe, we celebrate, we talk about whatever, we say we don't understand AI or whatever it might, whatever comes out. Nope, the arrow works now. Okay, great. So intros. Hi, everybody. I am Vanessa Grant. I'm like looking at my slide like I don't know who I am. I am I think freelance consultant, still kind of sorting through that. But right now, the bills are getting paid, and that's what's important. I have many certifications, hopefully a few more before the end of the year, maybe one more. I don't know if I keep pushing it off. I have 14 years, soon to be 15 years of Salesforce experience, but 24 with CRM. Scrum Master, I don't know, credentials. I've been a PO, a consultant, business analyst, and I also co-host the Salesforce Career Show for folks that are interested in learning more about how to climb higher, soar higher, something. I don't even remember my slogan for the Salesforce Career Show. And Matt, I know, is going to give himself. I'm going to guess do you have a slide on your deck introducing yourself? Should I just do an overview, or do you
I
want to do it
don't.
right now, Matt?
I
Okay,
don't.
so
So thank
you
you
know
for
what, Matt?
making this.
then you introduce yourself.
Okay. Well, thank you, Pay. Thank you, Vanessa. It's good to be here with you. Um, I'm still smiling over the picture with me in the background. That's very you. That's very you and Mindy. That's for sure. So, hi everybody. I'm Matthew Morris. My day job is the Salesforce CTO for Capgemini in the UK. I like to say that I've been in technology since 1994 because it's an exciting time right now, a time of great change, and it was back in 1994. It's been a really interesting 30 years to have a career in technology, and gosh, who knows what's going to happen next. So the first half of my career was outside of Salesforce, and then around about 2009, that's when I got into Salesforce, and I really loved the community aspect of it. It was much smaller back then. I do remember when I arrived in Salesforce world, I'm like, oh, this Salesforce thing seems quite well developed, and it's a fraction of what it is today. So I'm not right about anything, but I've certainly had a good time. Um, so yeah, I am a Salesforce MVP, Hall of Fame, whatever that is, and also have privilege of co-leading the London Admin Group in the UK, which I founded back in 2014. And trivia for our global audience: the London Admin Group was the first admin group because admin groups did not exist when we created the admin group. And I went to the leadership at Salesforce at the time, who said, go talk to Sarah, and she's no longer with Salesforce. I said, you need to sponsor my group, please. And then that's how the first admin group was born. And look, at everything's now an admin group or a BA group. It's all fantastic. And yeah, I am a Pluralsight author, I think, although my course is still on there. It's not free anymore, I'm afraid. But we'll do something to correct that. I was hoping to do it by the end of the year. But if you ever get an opportunity to do something like that, or if somebody comes up to you as they did back in 2017, when Don Robbins came up to me and said, would you like to record something for Pluralsight? Definitely grab it, because it's been a great experience. And yeah, I've done all those roles, including being a business owner and being a bit of a programmer, but I'm not a very good programmer. So yeah, it's been a wild and varied time. That was the short version, by the way. I can go on more, but I won't.
You can. If there's anything else you'd like to highlight.
I think we can definitely get to it in the presentation. But I think I covered most of it.
Sounds good. All right, cool. If you remember any later, we're happy to hear because we're very happy to have you and impressed with your wonderful career.
Oh, I
I
still
was
can't,
just
and I
limit.
still can't share my screen pay for some reason.
Oh, well, that's because I
Mm.
think because I'm sharing.
Ah, okay,
So let me. I'll finish up the slides,
that's
and I'll
fine.
pass it over to
Yeah.
you, Matt. All right, Paige, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello. I'm so glad that I'm not the only oldie in the in this group at the moment. I see Chris also and Becca saying, yeah, about 30 years for me as well. That's when I, finished my university. Long time it feels like the first 14 years in Microsoft space consulting space and the last 16 in the Salesforce space. I think it's the other way around. I need to fix it. So, done everything from data architect and Microsoft side, solution architecture, BA consultant, and then when I came over to Salesforce, I kind of stayed in the project and the delivery side of things, which was a lot more fun. Also, I have written two books. Second book just came out, the purple one, Successful Salesforce Projects, which I will kind of talk about later. So I'm just gonna cut my intro short, and I will hand it back to Vanessa so that Matt can get started on his super exciting talk, which I attended at London's Calling. So I am really chuffed to hear it again.
Cool. I'm just going to get through a few news items, and then we will get started. So, first, uh, and I'll bring this up again later, but Pay is doing a great thing with her book. If you guys donate £50, I have no idea what that converts to in whatever country you're in, but Google's great. Then Pay will give you a signed copy of the book, and she will talk through this a little bit more at the end of the session. But I wanted to make sure that we showed this twice, so you guys are ready with your QR scanner next time this slide comes up. Also, and I'm going to keep mentioning this while it's free education is always wonderful, particularly in this ecosystem. Salesforce has actually changed stuff a little bit. Three of the classes are no longer being offered. So now it's just these three, but they just released new openings for virtual classes December 3rd to 5th. I just signed up for one of them. Sign up was super easy if you guys are interested in one of those three classes on the left, and the AI specialist and AI associate certs are going to be free through December 31st. And I don't think retakes are free, but so get it good the first time. And then calls for speakers for folks that are interested in speaking, hopefully on BA topics, but I encourage you to speak no matter what. I'm a big fan of learning publicly, and that helps the community. Irish Dreamin', True North Dreamin', Ski Force, Texas Dreamin', Dream Olay, and Albania Dreamin' all have calls for speakers that are open currently. So definitely check those out. And if you're not interested in speaking and you're local, go attend them. I encourage all BAs to go and champion business analysis within the Salesforce ecosystem. Or if you want to speak to our group, we'll always have this slot up for all of our sessions. We're always happy to encourage folks that want to speak on BA topics. But right now we're going to, well, hold on. Speaking of next BA topics, I forgot the slide was here. Our next event should be December 17th. We're really excited about the speaker, but I'm not announcing it quite yet because I just want to make sure that we are totally solidified before we move on with that. But December 17th, if you guys want to mark it on your calendars. And now we are ready for diagramming Salesforce solutions with Matt Morris, and I will stop sharing, and we will hopefully get Matt to share.
It does. Yeah, it works now. It works now. They
Excellent.
keep us guessing things.
This technology, 30
Uh,
years, right, guys?
I'm, yeah. Well, I mean, that's definitely true. I definitely remember using live meeting on a dial-up. If anybody remembers that, was where you would call a colleague in the States. So let's see. Yeah, that works. PowerPoint slideshow. I don't know what I'm going to do about this big build-up that you've given me, though. It's it's all very
It's well
daunting.
deserved. This is
So,
a great session. And
yeah,
you
yeah,
know what?
yeah.
Let me preface this to our group too. Now, when Matt is one of those unicorns, and of course going to build you up somewhere, like you're super technical, but you're also so great about the storytelling aspect and the business analysis foundation. And what I want to leave you guys with as part of the session, and what I've gotten from it is the art of the possible, how you can communicate through diagrams. So listen to Matt, understand the vocabulary, understand the possibilities, and leave with that. I don't want you guys to think that as your entry level BA job that you're going to have to do all these, to do really, really complex things, but practice and understand, the power of this. So thank you very much, Matt. I will shut up now and you can keep going.
No, that's really helpful. Thanks, Vanessa, because I think I've kind of got the measure of the group and the purpose of the group now. So that's really helpful. And yeah, absolutely, it is. What I share is really the product of all the mistakes that I've made. So I'm not rich. I'm not retired yet. I'm not cashing out. For some reason, I seem to like to take the hard way. I like to know how things work, so I take things apart. I got in trouble at school one time because I took my calculator apart in a maths lesson. I mean, I'm sure the maths lesson was interesting, but seeing how the calculator worked was better. And that really, is at the heart of what I do, is to take things apart, find out how they work, and then try and explain it to other people. And that's really where the content of this talk certainly has come from. And I'll talk a little bit more about that if that's going to be helpful as we go through. So that's me. This is the Dreamforce deck. So I thought I would do the Dreamforce summary because I was working with somebody at Salesforce around, sort of updating the content for Dreamforce around diagram and Salesforce solutions. And she said to me, yeah, because I gave a few dry runs. She's like, yeah, but what I really want to hear about is what you use it for or how you use it rather than how you create the diagram. So I took that feedback because I think that kind of ties in with what I was saying before, which is I like to take things apart, see how they work. It doesn't always go right first time when you put things back together, but that's how you create what I think is richer lessons for people. So a little bit more history just on that vein then. So back in around 2016, I changed jobs from, I was working as a sort of an owner and consultant for a small boutique SI here in Bristol in the UK where I live. And I sort of went get another job. So I think I went to AstraZeneca, and then after a year there, I ended up bizarrely at McKinsey, which I know some people try all their, it's their goal as they go through university to get to an organization like that. And it was incredible. It's the hardest job I've ever had, but incredibly transformative. And that gave me the opportunity to work with some really smart people. It was the hardest job that I've had, but if you think working with smart people is hard, wait until you have to go back to the real world where not everybody's quite so sharp. But the whole drive really about having impact comes from, can you make things clear for people? Can you communicate clearly? And at the time as well, I was getting into the Salesforce architect track. It wasn't even a track then, it was very early, with an idea that I study and become one of these CTA type things. And again, Salesforce was very different back then. This is only 7 or 8 years ago. Salesforce was very different, but also the CTA was very different. The level of knowledge was very different. Everything was very different. But it was all a process and a journey, and we were making it up as we went along. So that's really when I started to get into using diagrams. And there was a situation where I was working for a large bank in the Netherlands, and sort out their architecture overall. And banks are incredibly complicated. I had a picture. It looked like all the systems were on, like the page had caught the measles. So to try and simplify, what I did is I took one of these big sort of A1 type flip charts, really big piece of paper, and I started to draw out some of the boxes on the page of what are the systems that you've got. And then as people would come into the office, I would grab them and I would say, what do you think of this? And they would start to draw on it. And that's really where I got the idea that having people engage around diagrams is a really good way to build relationships with stakeholders. And it's also a good temperature check, because if they don't pick the pen up, then they're probably not invested as somebody who does. And if they start writing on it, that's when you know that you've got them on side. And it was only really sort of later that I kind of came to appreciate the bias. And then the other thing that I was needing to do as I worked through the CTA stuff around, you would take a scenario. I don't know if those of you that's in this, you would take a sort of hypothetical scenario, which is sort of a compressed version of a real world situation. and you'd have a time limit to read it and then come up with the solution around it. And what I needed to do was to be able to extract the information from it very quickly, and not have to go back and search through the document each time that I wanted to know something, right? I said, oh, how many users were there that were using this particular system, or how many systems are they retiring? And so I adopted some techniques that probably already existed, but I rediscovered them for myself, that helped me to save time. And I continue today, and the times when I don't use them, I remember that I should be using them, and it's actually a lot easier when I go back to doing that. So it was really all that sort of experience that led me to the opportunity when a guy called Don, who was Salesforce MVP and a long-time educator in the Salesforce world, and if you ever see any of Don's content or any of Don's presentations recorded, definitely great advice that he has. And he said, I'm going to record this series of videos where it's going to be sort of a two-head situation where we discuss, whatever it is, whether it's programming or, you want to do it on diagrams. So that's where the Pluralsight course came from. And that came out in 2017, and then carried on, really collaborated with Gemma Blizzard when she was setting up Ladies Be Architects to produce some sort of real-time diagramming on my kitchen wall at the time, with some paper on it. So that's what that video is. So those are still up there on Ladies Be Architects. The Pluralsight, if you've got a Pluralsight account, it is still there, but it's not free anymore, because, well, Pluralsight's owned by venture capitalists now, so it's a different situation. So that's all the background, so much background. So what this really is then a hopefully whistle-stop tour of the main points of diagramming Salesforce solution, which involves extracting the information from some form of business requirements, and then the core diagram types, which I use time and time again. And I'll tell you why I use them and how I use them and how they might vary from standard sort of notation or convention. And that includes the notation Salesforce puts on the Salesforce Architects website. It's great to use, but I tell the story. There's no reason why you shouldn't supplement it a little bit. And then really, how to create those diagrams, and then finally resources and tools, and like common questions I get asked, and hopefully I can cover most of the questions, but if you've got any more, you can add them. So let's look at the first bit, which is extracting information. So as business analysts, you are in possession of hopefully the most comprehensive set of information that exists around a project. And if it doesn't exist, you're the people who are going to be correct. So hopefully you're much more familiar with this than some of my developer audience or even my architect audience. Having as many sources of information and as good a picture as possible is great, but we've really got to then extract from that the pertinent points. And so the way that I do that is to create lists as I read documents. Now, in a hypothetical scenario situation, that's obviously very quick. You just keep a very small list on a couple of sheets of paper. But there is value in keeping a spreadsheet for, which I'll show you in a minute, as you go through multiple assets and artifacts that you've got available or come into your possession. And just as I'm talking about it now, you could even create yourself an additional catalog if you wanted to, about where did you get information from, about particular facts that you're collecting. So depends how into spreadsheets you are, and I've got some colleagues that are absolutely phenomenal in using them. I tend to sort of style things out a bit more. But we're going to go through, we're going to extract the information, and then we're going to use that to structure our solution. And then once we've created that solution, we're going to use it to validate the assumptions that we've made, and then communicate back to different stakeholders. That might be in a positive way, or it might just be in a presentation as, this is what we're going to do. And all of these techniques work for, how things are today and how we want them to be in the future. So, sometimes labeled as is and to be, or the current state and the target state. And then the other one I should mention as well, which I use in recent years, is really talking about transition states. So, here's where we want to get to in the end. Here's the picture of what things look like at the moment. Well, it's not all going to happen in one jump. So having versions of how things are going to change over time, visually is also really, really useful. So these are the four lists which, project after project are always relevant. Depending on the type of thing you're doing, you might have other lists of things that you might think are relevant. By all means, add it. This is not this is not a prescriptive methodology. As I said, I kind of learn by doing, and when things don't work right, I tend to change things. But these are the ones that have stood the test of time. And so what they are, as I read through the documents, what I'm looking for is evidence of actors. So evidence of who are going to be the users of the system. And if possible, I might want to have an idea about what Salesforce license they might be using to log in with. It's not always clear. The more experienced you've got, or the solutions that you've built and refined, you tend to get better at this. So you should be able to tell, okay, well, I need a full Salesforce license, or maybe away with a platform license. Likewise, do they need Service Cloud, or is this just a Sales Cloud use case? And then the other big one is, are they going to be some sort of a license? Either a sales partner, or are they going to be sort of customer community? They're an end user, and we see that much more now in Salesforce solutions these days than we did, 6 or 7 years ago. So getting a picture of that is very important. And then what goes along with that is systems. So, what are the other pieces of technology in the landscape? So that could be existing CRMs, it could be ERP systems. We're putting Salesforce in, so often that gets listed as a new system. And again, just sort of using parentheses to add additional notation to say, yeah, this is going to be new, it's going to be replaced. And then as well, what are the systems that we control, and what are the systems that we don't? So external systems, maybe it's a cloud service that we use into some sort of credit check, or some sort of postcode lookup. These sorts of things, we want to show them on the landscape. We can only use them in a more limited way than a system that we own, in terms of our opportunity to change things. And then at a lower level, looking at how those systems interact with each other. So the systems to system integrations, and just using directional arrows to say, they talk to each other in both directions, or it's just a one-way communication. Salesforce is going to send a message to the ERP system. Just noting those things down. And then finally, bottom left, the most detailed item of listing is the Salesforce objects. So as I look through the documentation, I'm looking for descriptions of entities, or something that's going to store data, typically structured data in this instance, although it's very much more interesting to think about where we're going with products like Data Cloud, and the flow of data through organizations. That's something that I'm sort of experimenting with at the moment. But historically, it's been really around traditional Salesforce objects. And if I can think of what would be the Salesforce object that would fulfill the requirements that are existing here. So, accounts, contacts, that's going to be quite common. The sales scenario is going to be an opportunity somewhere. If it's a service scenario, it's probably going to be a case somewhere. Now, within the documents that you're reading, they might not use those words, and it's really down to you to use your experience of the business domain and the Salesforce platform to marry those things up. If you can't, then just write down whatever they call it, right? So if they call it a deal, just write a deal down there, and as you go back later and do a second pass, you can be like, probably is that an opportunity, or is that a quote? Let's have a look. But again, you're creating a list here that you can refer to, rather than having to go back to the source documentation. And the additional information you can put around the Salesforce objects is the expected number of rows. So if there's any indication of the volume of data involved, both the current and what the growth might be over time, that's really useful. And potentially who might be the main user of that, or the main controller of that record, that information. So we're trying to create a connection between our actors and our objects for use later on. Again, if you can't do it, this is a process of refinement. But that's the goal around the lists. So let's have a look at the diagram types. I'll have a big swig of gin. It's not really gin, Vanessa, although she probably thought it was. So the first one is the system landscape, and what I've done, over previous presentations, is actually to update this into that nice, pretty Salesforce diagrams type notation, because it looks pretty, and customers trust us more when they see things that look like what Salesforce told them, right? Because Salesforce told them that everything's easy. We can try and bridge that gap into getting to the harder details with a nice diagram they're familiar with. So system landscape really just draws all of the systems that we've listed in our list of systems, and we can make use of the integrations to draw the arrows on there. So we've already got all the information that we need from the little notes that we've taken. We don't have to troll back through the document. We don't have to hold it all in our heads. It's there just now to put down onto the page. And then what we can also do is relate our actors onto the landscape as well. So this isn't strictly like the notation you see on the Salesforce website, but again, it's something that's really useful when you're working with different groups of stakeholders, because they see themselves on the page, and then they're going to identify more with it. Oh yeah, I work in the data team. Yeah, I'm a data analyst. Oh, okay, this is what I'm going to be using. Okay, that makes more sense to me now. And it's really building that sense of connection and ownership that can really help them to open up and give you more information. So yeah, typically large box is going to be Salesforce. You're going to have supporting actors, if you like, or supporting heroes. So things like Azure Active Directory, some sort of login, that's going to be fairly universal. The way Salesforce sends emails now with that nice connection to Office 365, if any of you are working in a Microsoft environment. So again, Exchange often appears on the landscape. Likewise, Teams often appears on the landscape, or if you're using Google, or if you're using Slack, these things are all relevant here from a customer engagement point of view. They're worthwhile incorporating into the landscape. There'll be some form of integration, hopefully. Otherwise, the job's going to be very, very difficult. Maybe MuleSoft, might be something else, but again, that's going to be there. And if you've got a landscape drawn and you're seeing lots of point-to-point integrations, that's something that as a BA you might want to be flagging up to your architect. We certainly would be, and hopefully they're seeing it as well. Looking for well, how bad is the current architecture, and how much are we going to change it to move it to a better future state. And then the last one to note on this really is you might have a mixture of cloud-based systems and on-premise systems. So typically I sort of have the on-prem systems down the bottom. I used to draw a line with firewall. I tend to do that less now. It's less of a big deal to get firewall changes through in most places. But thinking about ERP systems that probably live in the data still, if they've not got cloud-based SAP or whatever, these are all relevant to the landscape. Then the next picture is the role hierarchy. So the role hierarchy we build up using the information of our actors, and we're using that then to represent how they're going to relate to one another within our Salesforce solution. And this one I tend to keep very flexible, and you see I've put some post-it notes on here, for example, in my diagram. That's because this really is a key diagram that I use for discussion, because there's always the challenge within an organization new to Salesforce of getting them to understand that the role hierarchy is kind of like their organizational hierarchy, but not exactly the same. So it's something that sort of goes through a lot of revision. And again, the thing that Salesforce doesn't do very well internally when it represents a role hierarchy, because it's just a tree, it doesn't show that combination of repeating groups. So whether you get East Coast, West Coast, or you've got different divisions, but inside each of those groups you tend to have sort of the same patterns repeating within the role hierarchy. So being able to have a page where you can detail that out more fully, again, helps to build the connection with your stakeholders as you review it, so that they can comment and say, oh yeah, but I also work with people I'm in business unit C, but I work with people in business unit A, around complaints, for example. How are we going to deal with that? So it helps you to see the bridges that you'll need to build across the standard role hierarchy within Salesforce. And moving on, the next one is the data model. So the data model is a data model, but I enhance it a little bit. So in addition to the entities and the relations that exist in sort of standard data model notation, I add some information that I've got from my reading and captured in my list for each of those entities. And if I haven't got the figure to put in or the information to put in, it's a good way to spot where I need to go and do more analysis to fill in that information. And those things are, what's the OWD going to be for that object? So what are the default sharing settings going to be for that object? Is it going to be public? Is it going to be public read only? Is it going to be private? Right? But let's put it on there. And then who is going to be the role that's going to own the majority of those records? Or if there's going to be two sets of owners because there's two different record types, you can even put that information in there. And what I'm doing now is I'm relating my data model to my role hierarchy. So then I can put the two pictures side by side, and I can ask myself, okay, can a person in this role see the record that they need to see? And then the last thing that I capture on this is some sort of information about the volume of the records. Now that could just be, there's not a lot of volatility and it's got 300,000 records in it. Or it could be that it's going to grow by 10% a year. So, we're going to get another 30,000 each year. And that, again, from a point of view, helps us to identify where are the hotspots system, where are the data objects that are going to be more volatile, and therefore we're going to need to think about the requirements of archiving, backup, data management, and that includes sandbox environments as well as production, right? Which brings us on to the last one, which is probably the most useful. Well, it's hard to say if any one of them is more or less useful than the other one, but it is the increasingly useful, in the age of Salesforce DevOps. And this is everything on a page, but equally you can make versions of this that don't have all of the stuff at once on it. But what we're saying here is, look, we've got different environments, and those are our colored bars. So here's where we're going to do development. Here's where we're going to bring everything to the development streams together, so that we can see if everything still works. And then we're going to move into our formal testing pillar. Then we're in production, and we're going to need to think about support as well. And then within each of those environments, here's how the Salesforce sandboxes work. So within our feature development, in this example, everybody gets a sandbox to develop their feature in. And then the lead developer is going to try and make sense of things in the main development environment and move it to QA. And so it goes on. If we're making use of deployment pipelines, with DevOps tooling, whether that's roll your own with Azure DevOps, or if you're using a GearSet or Capado or a Flowsum or whatever, let's represent that there. So how are we going to do deployment management? And also, where does the deployment management work and where does it not work? So for example, the feature development, maybe the developer's responsible for doing whatever it is they need to do, and they'll check it in, and then the deployment pipeline will pick up from the development environment forward. However you want to do it, this is a great way to align with the developers within the Salesforce team. And then once they're clear on how they're going to work, you can also communicate that with people in testing, people who are going to be doing the UAT with our super users, so that everybody's clear what environments that they're using. And that really brings in the last thing to think about, which is how we're going to manage the test data, particularly if we're working in larger projects where maybe there's an ERP system involved, or some sort of product management system involved, or price management, an external CPQ. We've got to think about, how do we do end-to-end testing? How can we have a common sets of data throughout our different environments that are going to allow us to do those sorts of end-to-end testing? So having this diagram really allows those conversations to take place with all of those different groups of stakeholders, both people within the Salesforce team, within project management, but then also with external teams who might not know anything about Salesforce. So, really important to try and build that bridge with them. So let's just do a quick recap on what we use them for, just sort of to do a side by side. So there's a couple of magic pairings, and one of those is the data model with the role hierarchy. And like I say, you're looking for you're looking for sense check-in. Can different groups of users have access to the information that they need? So, if we've got an OWD of private, therefore we're going to need to define some sharing rules that are going to allow, different business units in this example to have visibility of each other's opportunities. The other one that's really useful for this is also looking for any of those objects that have got large data volumes or are highly volatile. We also need to give consideration to both the performance of reporting and also the performance of sharing recalculations that might need to happen. So if we've got a lot of users coming in and leaving the business regularly, and they're using objects which have got a lot of records in them, it might be that we need to plan for what is it called? Delayed sharing recalculations, or however however it's going to be done in the solution. But this is a great way to start to pick out hotspots. And then for the landscape, again, it's really good for engaging with people who are outside of the Salesforce system. So the IT team would be key to that. We want to use single sign-on. We need to go and explain to them how the single sign-on functionality of Azure Active Directory, for example, is going to work with Salesforce. Who are going to be the users that are going to use it? How are we going to get them provisioned? How are we going to line up the permissions that they have in Active Directory with the permissions that they have in Salesforce? So giving a landscape diagram, introducing a landscape diagram into that conversation, it just helps to focus the attention of people about what it is that you're talking about. And then think about the coordination of testing. So again, you compare the system landscape with your environments. Okay, so here's the systems we've got. SAP, they're on-prem. They've got a test environment. Here's how we're going to match them up. Here's how we're going to align the data for our testing. And then the last thing is all the diagrams that I've showed you on screen up till now have been making as best use of the real estate for the purpose that I want to use them for, which is to talk about the thing on the diagram, right? So I want to have as much space to get as much on, or have the text be as large as possible. But when you're going to issue copies to people, really important to include some information around it. Include ownership and version information, include a key that helps them understand what it is that they're looking at when you're not there to explain them. And I tend to keep 2 copies. So I keep my working copy, which is quite clean, and I can put it on screen. And then when I distribute a version, I'll put a header block onto it and send it over that way. So a little bit like you would do with other documents. And then the last one is really resources and tools. So I got a QR code, hopefully that works. So the first question I always get asked is, can I have a copy of diagrams? You don't need to, because Salesforce is doing that for us now. So that library on the architectsalesforce.com website just gets better and better, and I believe they're going to continue to build it out. They're including things now like the data cloud standard data model, data models like data models were supposed to be made. So those assets are being made available and published there, and when they publish them, they're also enabled to work with a number of tools that support Salesforce diagrams. So, next question is, well, what's the best tool? There's an increasing number of tools that support this pretty format. If you don't want to use this format, or your company doesn't use this format, might even increase your tools that you can use. But certainly, like Lucidchart, it seems to be the one that people go for. Honestly, I used to love Visio back in the day, but it doesn't seem to be as good as it used to be. I use a lot of PowerPoint just because I worked in consultancy a lot. You can do a lot with that. But then I think that what's really interesting is like the value-added tools, things like Elements, which is making not only use of the visual aspect of it, but also making use of the metadata and the links to Salesforce. I'd really like to see, more and more of that. But if you're just getting started with an idea, you can't beat pencil and paper or whiteboard. There's nothing worse than sitting down in front of a screen and then procrastinating because you want to make it perfect. Much better to be in a creative environment where you're brainstorming, and if you're doing it as a group, even better. But just getting those ideas out so that you can refine them, and that includes the initial list making. I would typically just take an A4 piece of paper, divide it up into 4 squares, and if I needed more room, I'd just get another piece of paper and divide it up into 4 squares for my 4 lists, and then transcribe it afterwards. This has just been like the core diagrams. I've done presentations in the past, and I will do again. And with the changes in the technologies that we're seeing, I'm sure this is going to change. But yeah, certainly things like capability diagrams, reference architectures, data flow diagrams, sequence diagrams. All of these things are very useful for more specific and detailed sets of information. So that's why the 4 diagrams ends up being the sort of the go-to. And that is the end.
Woohoo!
I'm sorry, I took more time than I thought it was going to take.
Oh no, I think it was mostly me ranting in the beginning. We do have some questions for you if you're able to hang out for a bit.
Yeah, I can stay till 5, and then I'm going to get on my illegally bike and go pick my daughter up.
Okay, sounds good. So even though I have no idea what time 5 is over there, so Kay's gonna have to keep me honest.
12 minutes.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So we have, I know somebody just requested presenter. Should we bring somebody up to ask a question?
Let's do the questions in the Q&A first because they came first.
Okay. Q&A questions. Where do you resolve what is in common between feature A, B, and C? Is there not any fundamental feature development that must come before or in conjunction with these features?
Okay, so good question. So that would be, I guess, more a planning stage rather than an envisioning stage. Envisioning stage. So I think with reference to the 4 diagrams that we've seen, you could certainly go back and refer to the diagrams to validate, okay, have we got the dependencies right? We're thinking about making a change in this ERP. The ERP team is going to make a change in this system, and we're going to make a change in the CRM system. What does that mean? So you could certainly use those diagrams for that. In terms of getting down into absolute dependencies, I think for me that's more of a Gantt chart and a project plan. With the dependencies, I would think that's how I would approach it. Does that answer the question?
I will let Michelle note in the chat if she has any follow-up. Or folks can also request to come up if they want to speak without me playing telephone. All right, the other question is, so for Salesforce objects, if the company is listing how they are calling a system, should we as BAs create a document, usually internal, that would translate from how they called their current system, i.e. deals, to the new object opportunities?
Things like that are really useful, and I have colleagues that are much better at doing that sort of stuff than me. But yeah, this is like spreadsheets were born for this, right? So having a like, what do we call it? It's almost like a data dictionary. Exactly that. So in the current system they call it a deal because they're using some old CRM. We're going to call that an opportunity. Likewise, even as fundamental, and this was pointed out to me on a project recently with a colleague, is oftentimes people don't even agree how many business units there are in their business, right? So we got 7 business units. Colleague of mine goes and does the research. Actually, there's 11, but people munge things together. So getting to that specific detail and putting that in a register somewhere in a spreadsheet is really, really useful, because again, you can go back to, if we just sort of take the simple diagram approach, you go back to the diagrams and you say, okay, does what I know now make sense to what's on this page? If not, let's go talk to people about that, and then ultimately let's draw the page like it needs to be or correct the list.
Cool. Oh, and Michelle said thank you for your previous answer. It did the trick. And then which role or roles on the project team typically create these four types of diagrams?
Um, Architect for sure. Across everything. I would think all of these diagrams would be relevant to business analyst role, and I would include in that the environment management things. So let me put that one back up, because that's almost one of the busiest. But I think these four definitely in common are ones that everybody in the team should know that they exist, and that they should know why they exist or what they can use them for. In terms of having responsibility for creating them, um, let's say the one on the screen right now, maybe that is more of a technical role.
We don't have one on the screen right now, by the way.
You don't? Oh, I'm not sharing. There we go. Let's share.
The one in Matt's mind right now is the
Yeah.
one.
So, hang on. I
There we go.
shared. Did I share the right one?
Yeah, that was a diagram.
That's funny, because I thought, hang on a minute. I think I just shared to Google presentation. Anyway, right. Yeah. So this one, this one might be more technical in terms of our environments, but again, the way developers see things is not maybe the way that the project manager sees things. So I think having these be created by a person who's best skilled to do it, but then validated with the entire team is for sure the best thing to do. Data model, business analyst, architect. I guess it depends where the responsibility around pure analysis versus solution lies. And within the Salesforce world, in my experience, those two things are very, very blurry, right? As soon as we find something out, I'm always going straight to solution with Salesforce. I mean, that's one of the most fun things about it. Is it pure? Don't know, but that's what I do. Role hierarchy. Yeah, I mean, I think again, this often is one that changes the most and gets built up over time. So I think under constant review, if you've got a solution architect, on the team, and formally, then there's probably solution architecture assets. But I think again, BA and technical input is critical. What's the first one? System landscape. Yeah, I mean, let the SA do that, but you can spot their obvious mistakes. Hey, you forgot this.
And I was just I was mentioning in the chat earlier. So something like this. I mean, also strategy designers, even before you're coming up with the solution, just having like right now, I'm on a project where it's like going in and trying to understand how their systems are all connected. This comes up as a strategy designer. The one with the uh, kind of the deployment pattern came up often for me as a product owner, and as BAs it's important for us, especially if we're supporting during UAT, to understand which environment we're doing UAT out of. For sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's can you use these to aid the creation of the solution? Absolutely, but you can also use it to prevent people being confused or not clear or not aligned. And I think something around the environments, it's always been complicated, but I think in the Salesforce world, even now, we still just about manage to dodge it and say, oh, we're just sort of a little sales automation solution on the side. But I think with the arrival of data cloud over the last couple of years, and the significance of the future being much more data driven, it's got to be much more integrated. I don't think we can get away with just sort of doing stuff in isolation anymore, because you won't be able to use the AI stuff on Salesforce unless the data's on there.
Yeah, and I also feel like as BAs, a lot of times, because one of the ways that we can add value is by being able to pick out dysfunction on a team. And sometimes these types of diagrams will help sort out some of the dysfunction on the team. Do
Yeah,
you have a couple more questions that came in? Sorry, I just noticed
yeah,
they
yeah.
came in. So let me ask, do you have any guidance / references on creating diagrams for predictive models with AI stuff?
No, but when you do, send them to me. I'm very interested.
He'll add them to his presentation.
I haven't, yeah,
Excellent.
I haven't taken that apart and broken it yet, so I don't know.
Cool.
No, again, I was hopefully, between meetings this morning, trying to think more broadly about how things are changing, or what are the things that we used to do 15 years ago that we stopped doing because we didn't need to do it with Salesforce anymore, but now we might need to start doing them again. Um, and I think sort of interaction diagrams, is one of those techniques that sort of fell out of favor. I think things are going to be much more experience driven now, and so it's not just the the AI element. It's really actually how that relates to the user experience, user interaction. What's driving the generative aspect of the solution, and then what's generated, what happens with that. I think these are all really interesting things.
Awesome. And then, all right, we've got 3 minutes, so I'm going to try and be quick. Any specific diagram to talk through the profiles and their relationships with objects and features?
No, I haven't used that one, but that's a great suggestion, and I think that's where I'd really look to tools to help. Particularly with something that's as volatile as permission sets and profiles, right? Being able to visualize who has access to what, and to have it done with boxes and lines would be great. I don't know if that's something Elements generates already, but yeah, I mean, you could definitely think about how you might do that. You might sort of have like I did with the database, right? You sort of have a block for each of the profiles, and you could list inside what the objects are. Likewise, you could add that to the data model diagram, um, and have sort of what you might have a version of this which includes list of permission sets that access that object, for example. The thing I would say though, and this is why I'm quite controversial, I'm quite anti documentation for documentation's sake. Why? Because somebody's got to keep it up to date, otherwise it doesn't have value, right? If it's out of date, how can it be authoritative? So if you're having to have somebody update it, which is going to be the first thing that's going to get cut when time is short, what we really want to be able to do is to generate it from the metadata and the data in Salesforce. So tools that do that, or if you can even create one yourself, right, by just extracting some stuff and then pushing it through a spreadsheet, that's far preferable, in my view.
Awesome. Well, Matt, thank you so much for your time. There were a couple questions. Sorry we didn't get to all of them, folks, but thank you so much, Matt. I know you got to go pick up your daughter. And
Yeah,
BAs, feel free to stay on. We're gonna still keep going for another 30 minutes. Some BA after dark chat, and yeah, thanks, Matt. And I don't know if there's anything. Yay, Matt. I don't know. There's no so bad at emojis and
you
stuff.
don't have like
It
bots.
kills me that
Yeah,
Bevy doesn't have
can.
emojis.
No, this has been brilliant. I mean, next to the admins, I think BAs are the coolest group of Salesforce.
Oh,
Of
you can.
course.
I
Oh,
can't
oh,
I can't put you at the top because
the gin is kicking in, Matt. I can.
yeah, in COVID times it was Jim, but not these days, unfortunately. Well, actually, probably
Thank you so much, Matt.
Thank you.
thanks
Really
everyone. Soon. Thank you.
amazing. Thank you.
All right,
Oh,
folks. So feel free to stay on. So I'm going to figure out how to share my screen again. So we didn't want to rush Matt, and Pay was like, "Don't worry, we can do my segment next month." So our author spotlight will take place next month, but in this month, I think the important part is hold on, let's go through some slides real quick. There we go. That's the one. I will keep this up for a bit because I told you guys that I would put it up. This is the QR code if folks want to donate to Samaritans, and you will get a special signed copy of Pay's new book from Pay. Pay, do you want to talk a little bit about Samaritans, and then we can spotlight the book and the author stuff next month if that's okay?
yes, please. Thank you very much. So, Samaritans is a crisis phone line in the UK that I have been volunteering for the last 15 years. I also train the new volunteers, and it's something that I didn't know would change my life because as soon as, when I started volunteering, all my projects just seemed to go really, really smoothly. And it's just because I was listening. I was paying attention. And then when I coach my team to listen to themselves, to each other, to the client, to to what the real issue is. So all the human drama and all the issues seem to kind of fall away. So it's helped me a lot more, I think, than I give. I feel like I take a lot more out of it. But also at one time I think I would have been a caller. So now what I do is I volunteer and I fundraise. So we take calls on the phone, the old-fashioned phone. We also do emails and web chat. So web chat is a limited service that we're still trying to roll out the kinks from. But if you're anywhere other than UK, you can write into Joe at Samaritans.org. So at every chance I get, I try and fundraise for them. Um, so just like the first book, anyone who donates at least £50. If you want to donate more, I'm not going to argue, but I will send you a signed copy. So I will buy it for you. I will mail it to you, and you will get a special gift from me, as well as I'll draw a little something for you as well. That's how much it means to me. You will be saving lives 100%, because there are a lot of people out there who are struggling, who's got a lot of weight on their shoulders that they carry day to day, and they haven't got anyone to talk to. And sometimes you just need someone to listen. And I'm grateful for any support that you can give, even if it's just sharing this little picture, this little gift, so that more people can know about Samaritans. Yes, so that's me. Thank you very much, Nessa, for reminding me and putting this up again for people to know about and maybe to help me raise money.
Yes. And we have a question. Can your book be shipped to the US?
Yes, I can ship them anywhere. I don't know if you'll get it by Christmas, because at the moment I've got a small manufacturing defect that I'm trying to get sorted with Amazon. So as soon as they've sorted it or not, I will be sending them out as soon as I can. Thank you.
Awesome. And so save lives and possibly your Salesforce projects. That sounds like a great combination to me. Sorry, Pay, that that you know what? I think maybe I'll move the news to the end next time, so I can always cut the news and be like news. Um, but happy to highlight Samaritans. And I totally I totally forgot to take a screen capture. I was too like riveted by Matt's diagrams and that those UK accents. I'm a big fan. If anybody managed to take a screen capture while Matt was talking and wants to send it to me, I'd be very grateful. So just send it to me on LinkedIn. I don't know if Pei took one, or if anybody wants to take one now, that would also be helpful. Actually, you know what? Maybe I will just we th this is not
Okay.
the same kind of great gallery view that they have on
Yeah,
Zoom, I gotta say. I miss seeing all your faces.
me
But
too.
but eh. Anyway, okay, so you know what? I will wrap up the official version of this session, and let's see. And do a thank you everybody for coming and seeing Matt's session, and learning some BA news, talking about Samaritans a bit, and feel free to stay on. We're going to have a little unscripted, unrecorded BA griping after dark after this, but see you guys next month.